We lost him.
He's in his bunker. I think he's using up all his bandwidth.
Using up all his bandwidth, like chewing Zins just fine.
He's going to have to move next to a data center. I think that's the only way. He's got to get, Troy, you got to get close to the metal.
He's got to run his own server farm.
Yeah.
It's nice to have these little breaks where we don't have him, but we can still talk about him. And
he's just frozen on screen.
He gives me the energy of a kid that's just discovered atheism and read a Richard Dawkins book, you know? He's so excited about it.
Yeah, no, there's some libertarian energy. The high school kid who got into Ayn Rand.
How long till he makes his own email client?
So here's the thing that you're competing with, and I think that this is a broader point that applies to many businesses right now. I've built this structure that kind of creates the universe, allows a human to filter it down, and then go deeper, and then extract information from that. Right? And what I hold it up against is, can I just go to an LLM and query it and get something back? Because increasingly, I notice with OpenAI or ChatGPT as an example, it remembers a lot of our previous interactions. So its results are increasingly personalized. So what I've been doing is saying, oh, I found something in my universe I'm interested in. So for example, this morning, Brian sent out a note saying, look at this MTS thing, which is monitoring the situation, a new media thing, which we'll get into later, right? And so I just take that and I paste it into my, ChatGPT, which I still really like. And it gives me back a really good answer on, what it is and why it's interesting and why it's significant to me. It's really, really efficient and it's really good. And so with this system that I built to kind of sort through the universe and then take it and try to create a brief, the question is it like, because Brian keeps asking me, where's the nugget? Where's the nugget? How does it find something? Like, how does it sort of imitate the way I think or go through my research process? So I think that, the question is with all of this stuff is, can you improve on what someone just would do by, just kind of doing what they normally do, which is go and put something in the chat window. And the reason I think that's significant is the question with a lot of businesses these days is, what value do you create on top of the LLM? Because if it's not really significant because there's a network effect or because you have a unique data set or because you're part of a workflow, then they're just going to do it better. And I mean, I think we saw that in some ways this week with, Claude Design.
You're coming in hot.
Jesus Christ, Troy, you're like speed running through this. I haven't even said who the hell we are.
Well, okay, so welcome.
He's eager.
Welcome to the People versus Algorithms featuring Troy Young. Go on.
Well, I guess I had some on my mind. I thought I was ill prepared.
He's starting to sound like Mark Andreessen, like you're so fast. I was like,
we'll give you a little bit more time, but you get like 30%. I get 20%. Alex gets 20%.
Who gets the rest?
How much is that? 40?
70.
AB? Does AB 30? AB gets 10%. I don't know what the rest.
Max 10.
Welcome to People versus Algorithms. A show about media, technology, culture, money, papal affairs. I don't have anything on the Pope front actually this week. I'm Brian Morrissey. I'm joined by Vibe Coder-in-Chief Troy Young and Alex Schleifer. Troy, should we table your I've actually been inspired. I now get it. I know I made fun of Troy's little erector set project for a while, but I think you're on.
Excuse me?
Erector set. You remember erector sets?
Do you have a speech impediment?
No, it's an erector set. We're so immature. This is why we need more female energy on
pretty juvenile, but it's very funny.
Alex brings the female energy.
No, that's AB.
Oh, God, thank you. I tried.
Alex, you have not been immersed in Troy's erector set, but I have been. I've been trying to elbow my way back in since Troy took away my co-authorship of the hot take machine. But he, of course, like anyone who enters the marketplace, Troy's taken a hard pivot to B2B, I feel.
He has. I mean, I just to bring the audience along, Troy has been, over the past few weeks, immersing himself in vibe coding. in fact, very impressively having an output of apps. I don't know how much this is costing you in token cost, Troy, but you've been going for it.
And he keeps getting frustrated that we don't know where they are, whether they're on Vercel or Railway.
It is actually, and I know it's kind of, cute to say that it's the bills are running up, but they are. And there's something really a little bit mischievous and a little bit confusing about how Claude bills you, because you get either your pro or your max plan. So that's either like $20 or $200 a month. And I'm on the $200. So it's right away, it's more than all my streaming subscriptions. But the problem is the apps I build are very, very API hungry. So they're classifying a lot of content and making a lot of queries and a lot of parallel queries, which is like,
oh, we lost him.
I've actually been impressed with what Troy has built. I hope when he does, if he does come back, because I think he's onto something with this idea of memory being the core function of organizations. Like organizational memory and personal memory is more valuable than ever. And the sad part, as organizations age and as people age, their memory gets worse. I can't remember anything. And so my hope is what Troy is building is basically just like a brain that has all of your memory and is able to then help you create. That's why I'm pushing it, media artifacts. Like I want to create stuff using the machine, but directing the machine. And I think where the human is in the loop is actually critical to what Troy is building here. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think being able to build the interfaces where, stuff is happening when you're not there, stuff is happening when you're there, and then you can query it so that you can kind of recall or get ideas out of is the path forward. Troy, we've just been talking without you. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Troy.
There's a guy working in the data room.
You have a data room?
I think he knocked
the data room too. You went from a sauna to a data room. You're going in the wrong direction.
Well, no, there's just a closet that has a lot of wires.
Oh, really?
Oh, I remember server closets. Those were great. They scared me. I would like open it by accident sometimes and close it real quick.
I mean, the rent wasn't that useful. I mean, other than I'm kicked off of Claude for token usage. I'm spending $200 a month there, more than my streaming bills. The cost that I'm incurring, there's two tiers on Claude. One is you using their system to build things, and that's my Claude Max subscription. And then there's all my API usage. And because they're different, and sometimes you're not aware of how much you're spending. So I had spent $500 in API usage, and it maxed out because I had set a threshold. And so what I had it do is I was so confused by the billing, I had Claude write a very eloquent and very positive note to the nice people at Anthropic, because there's now no friction in writing a complaint letter, and submit it for me.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah, so I'm just like, this is confusing.
Will you use their tools against them? That's nice.
Yeah, I used it to help write a story in a positive way about how they could improve the product and how I wanted a credit to my API account.
I used Claude in a customer service dispute. I don't like to have many of them, but with lens crafters, about them violating the FTC contact lens rule. I've got,
well, you're violating the rule of classes.
You're losing when you're standing in lens crafters, outraged and quoting the FTC contact lens rule. I realized that halfway through. But I was saying to when you took your little walkabout, and I know you don't want to divulge too many details of this because it's a work in progress, but I was saying how I really think that it's powerful, this idea of memory. Can you just talk a little bit about why memory is critical to what you're building?
Well, in the case of what I'm building, I actually think that it's going to be really important to companies broadly, because the way that the response to an LLM is shaped is by what it knows about you. And then all of the data that you create around your business, whatever your business is, how that gets, we would talk about that in before times as being like our approach or our culture or how we do things. And, that is, on the very far end, institutional knowledge. It's on the softer side, it's your culture And, when you think about it, it's kind of like how you do things, how you build things. All of that is the most valuable thing a company has. In the media world, it's captured in the kind of history and legacy of your brand and how you, bring people into a company and how, one generation inside of a company passes on, thoughts and approaches and point of views to the next. And it kind of evolves over time. So that's really your media brand. And so in our case, what I had done, and I think I talked about this on the last episode, so I don't need to get into it too much, but basically I just took all of the PVA junk and I made a brain. And that brain is just all the things that we talk about, all the concepts, all the people, the things that we keep coming back to. And that is manifest in a very, very simple wiki. And it's like a list of concepts and a page. It's like the Wikipedia for PVA.
But
and it's not meant
but
to
stop
be...
here for a second, because I'm hearing a lot of people get frustrated. They keep getting sent these, I don't know, what is his guys called, Carpathy, or all these people on X speaking very fast about how they're using agents in Second Brain and agents talking to agents to do their taxes. Well, and people are like, and then they sit in front of Claude and they're like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like when you say build a brain, what does that even mean? So you downloaded all of the PVA transcripts, you gave it to
and
all of our posts, everything,
and all of our chat,
all of this text in
content. That's context.
That's just a context. Yeah. Just like it could be text files or web pages.
You just set the LLM loose on a series of folders
using
and it makes
Claude
connections between
co-work, right? So you switch.
No, I did it like hardcore. I did it on GitHub and I have an agent in there doing it.
Right. Okay. So you got an agent to go through.
You don't understand how much Troy has advanced in this, Alex.
No, I understand how much Troy has advanced.
AI.
I'm just trying
Once
to bring
he got on Railway, it was like off to the races.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, but a lot of the AI content is just people talking very fast after just being on a binger of AI.
Okay. I mean, listen, we have a smart audience, Alex. So I can, I can get to the point. Anyway, the point is that we created a wiki, and the wiki, when I looked at the wiki, I was like, holy fuck, that's how we talk. And those are the concepts that we talk about. And this is a kind of breathing manifestation of this little project that the three of us have together called People versus Algorithms. And it strikes me that if you were ever going to codify a brand, a media brand especially, it's just the things you talk about. It's the concept and entities that you describe. And each one of those is literally a page, right? And a page might have a title, Algorithmic Sameness. And that would build out, because we've talked about that 5 times. So it builds out that page and it says, this is what it's about. This is when you talked about it, all of that. And I'm going to get to one other. That is our memory. That is what this project is. And so everything that I do in this little media machine goes and asks the memory, how does this relate to everything we've talked about before? And is it relevant? So it really is a lens that says, is something important to us or not? Now, over time, you want that to evolve. So the way I've built the system is it feeds back to the memory after it's created an output. So I'm always feeding it and growing it. Now, just an example that will come to us.
Sorry, but that's like the issue with knowledge systems is that, well, first you have to gather all the data, right? And so you build a wiki, and the wiki is great because it's both human readable and machine readable, right? Like it becomes
right. It's just a bunch of markdown files.
And then the second problem, which is the biggest problem with any knowledge or memory, institutional memory or anything like that, is maintenance, right? Like people love writing documents and guidelines and tutorials and all these things, but these things get out of sync day one. And that's another great thing that AI can do, just like your general output, in our case, just us like bloviating an hour a week and writing newsletters becomes a source for updating this thing.
Did you say hour? Sorry, I got caught up on that part.
It's an insights product, Alex.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll tell you one example of it is today. I was like, do we have a good product in the kitty? And I queried the wiki to say, what are all of the good products that we've ever talked about? Put them into categories and list them back for me. So it was in 2 seconds able to just go back and get that history of the things that we've talked about and why. And that will become a useful intro to the segment in 30 minutes if you stick around.
Let's hope we do. This is a good basis because I think that I think editorial organizations, but I think everyone is going to have an information operation, and it will probably be built around something similar to this. That's my sort of optimistic.
I mean,
take.
I've been trying to build my personal version of this using something called Obsidian Notes, which is a note taking system, right? That's you can use any.
It's a dirty geek.
Troy has admonished me to get on Obsidian. He's like, literally.
You can put Obsidian on top of the wiki and do all kinds
right.
of
It
nice
just
stuff.
stores your notes, and then you can get the AI. I'm still not fully.
Obsidian is not for civilians, by the way.
No, not really. Everybody thinks it is, but like it is. It's something that's
No, but Obsidian is the kind of thing they talk about.
right.
Where you
It's
live.
very easy. It's very
not
easy
what
to
we
drop.
talk about
But
here.
however, it does feel, and we can move on from this topic after that. But it does feel that this.
No, it's like being into music and talking about Black Flag or talking about like
Yeah.
Lee Perry or something. Like it's an insider.
It's either way. I think what I'm trying to do is similar build my own memory of things to have a AI that I can then query. And when it works, and I think yours probably works better than what I've built. When it works, it becomes very obvious that that's where AI is going. That's where something like having Gemini running constantly on your iPhone, and your iPhone having access to your email and your photos and your things and your stuff like that is going to build that institutional memory. And I think people don't have the context yet of what happens when you have an AI that really knows you and can pull back information.
And I think one of the interesting things that this brings up, because Meta this week sent out a memo saying it's going to be tracking everything that its like developers are doing. And it's kind of like you digging your own grave kind of thing. And I think a lot of workers feel this way, right or wrong, that they're being used to train the AI that's going to replace them. I mean, mostly because like we've already seen this. You basically get into an industrial organization and they're looking to replace you with someone younger and cheaper. And now they're looking to replace you with tokens. I mean, why not? They don't get sick. Although now some companies are spending more on their token bills.
Maybe reframe it a little. Don't talk about it like it's us and them. I mean,
if it is,
think,
then we can talk about it us versus.
Well, you'll replace people just as readily as some other corporate monster.
Me?
It's about
me.
Yeah, you. Yeah.
I spoke nice about your machine. Like, what do I get in backward?
The irony, though, is that yes, the kind of the highest tier of tech people are being used as training data for these LLMs, and at the same time, we're seeing videos from people working in factories in India with cameras on their foreheads, seeing how they fold fabric. And I think everybody's kind of feeding into these learning models so that we can be replaced. Every time you're asked if you're not a robot, you're training a robot to do the things you are meant to be doing.
So McClatchy is an old school like newspaper chain, and they're leaning hard into AI. They've got this new content scaling agent, which Troy, you have to like that as a branding, right, for an internal tool. And basically, the new tool produces new pieces using reporters' existing work, adapting articles to audiences and generating different versions, scripts for short videos, etc. It's kind of I can see your brain doing this. I think that the challenge here is within these craft organizations, the artifact was, the article or what you make. And this is obviously with design. When you are feeding context into a machine and then orchestrating the output, I mean, you don't need to read Marx, but this is a sort of alienation like on steroids. But I think it is inevitable, and it is going to require a lot of cultural change within organizations when you are feeding context into a machine and then orchestrating the production of the artifact versus just crafting the artifact.
Are we allowed to comment on this?
Yeah, I thought.
Why wouldn't we be?
I thought I would get my own little solo.
Funnily enough, I just got off a call on this, and I really, really think that if you're a media company, you got to kind of know who you are and pick your lane. And good on McClatchy for trying to get in front of something, because and those lanes crudely are you going to be a craft organization that makes beautifully, human created things that people appreciate and embrace for their insight and their point of view and their humanity and all the wonderful messiness that is humans. And this is happening everywhere in the world. Or if you're a media company, and imagine that you create, like, your distribution kind of success comes from, let's say you're present in 10 countries and you write articles that recap football games. You write those in different languages all over the world, and you tell people how to watch a game, or you comment on what happened in a game. A lot of it is really, really mechanical. And the truth is that you can build really good systems, sometimes mostly with the human in the loop, but that do a lot of the work that accelerates production of that stuff, and it makes no difference to the end consumer.
Well, you're talking about
it's giving them the same product.
How to watch a game. Like, I mean, okay, like, what time is the Super Bowl?
Well, okay, I knew you were gonna single in. I mean, the dirty secret is a lot of companies write a lot of very basic service content to get distribution, and to serve consumers in really superficial ways. Well,
I understand.
Yeah, no, but I understand that either. But
I'm saying that faced with this, the company I was speaking to was either going to get really good at becoming an AI-assisted, efficient content creator, or sort of say that's not going to be our plan.
Right. And I think that, right, like, when I'm looking at that, and you might be calling me naive in about 2 minutes, Troy, but it does.
Kyle, she says,
why don't you guys just automate me? Where you can press the naive button.
Well, I mean, you're predictable. But I wonder, like, these companies where the moat was just the scale of the content that they were creating in this case, right? Or where the moat was scale, that is completely flattened with AI. So going in and saying we're going to spend money and time to automate a lot of our scale play, I feel is over time at least a losing battle, because can't you just do what McClatchy? Can't you just create Troy with your, add a couple of people, maybe a couple of $1,000s in tokens, some server costs, and all of a sudden you're creating all that content, reading all the feeds and your New York Times things, and like, it feels like this company, what is being explained to me is something that I feel I could do by myself if you just gave me, 6 weeks. Does that? Am I?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to believe that it's more than just a generic prompt in the case of
it doesn't. I mean, it wouldn't be
a company. You called it a scale player. I'm saying, what if they have a unique data set that can be tapped by the AI? What if they have transactional relationships that can be tapped by the AI? What if they have a history of content that is unique to them?
But the truth is that a lot of these companies don't. A lot of these companies are what time is the game on? What is the best printer? SEO
no, that's not a company.
And stuff like
that.
Well,
I think this is the main challenge that I see. I mean, a lot of companies are moving from a volume game, and you produce a lot. You need to produce a lot of volume to get a lot of search traffic, et cetera.
Yeah, you have to really
figuring out whether they're going to compete and be an AI-enabled volume machine, and a lot of times the answer is going to be both, to keep up that traffic business, but then to build an engagement business, and that's the events, that's the IRL economy, et cetera. I mean,
but don't we feel that at this stage, AI?
There's another factor,
AI highly benefits smaller players like us that have a niche topic, personality based, compared to these larger companies. I think what we're realizing is that they were trading in a commodity that required a lot of people management and infrastructure around them. And once you kind of remove that, the company doesn't really have much.
Troy, you were trying to pipe up.
Well, I agree with that, but I also think that the far end of it is also difficult. Meaning, the idea that we are just going to be a kind of human-centered, bespoke, like, content creation, company is also fraud, because there's so many people doing that, right? And the value in that is increasingly hard to capture. The one thing that Alex has been saying very unspecifically, which is something that I like to call him on, is that, you have to create different products. You have to really think about this game and be an innovator around your media product. And that's such a, I'm not saying that you're lame. I'm saying that's so sort of hand wavy, right? Go make something, go build, forever your company made media and now you should go invent new things. But I'm actually coming around to it because
pivot to naivete. We've got the episode title right there. The pivot to naivete.
That was just.
I'm actually
you took me on an emotional.
Things are bad when you're pivoting to naivete.
Because we've just been handed a box of Play-Doh. And like one of the things that Brian and I have been discussing, and we talked about it briefly yesterday, Alex, is that so we create a nice little podcast. People like listen to it. I make this kind of media machine, and hopefully it makes the process of creating this and a newsletter and other stuff a little more efficient. But where's the real value? And the value is in the saloon.
Hell yeah.
And I jump to the saloon because the saloon is where people, cavort. It's the community.
I wouldn't lead with the cavorting part, but go on.
Okay. So what if you could start to build better tools that enable us to get the people that like us to interact with one another and interact with us? And what if we could make that experience more rewarding? And what if those connections started to grow outside of us? And that's the in the old days, if you went into a media company and you said, yeah, we got a great brand, we want to build a social network around it, I would have laughed you out of the room. Not only because the network effect of what you're competing with is impossible, but because the tech lift is impossible. Yeah. And it's no longer impossible. Like you can build a mini social network around a small audience. No problem. I can build it right now while we're on this podcast. And so, yeah, we are at a time where there's a type of person, a deeply curious person that's a little bit technical and a little bit product and a little bit rock and roll. And these people are very rare.
Are you one of those people, Troy?
100% I am. Yes, I
knew it. Alex is one of those people. I don't think I am.
100%. I mean, back me up, Al. I mean, of course, I'm proving it. Yes,
so
I am one of those people.
I just sent out a newsletter where I've been trying to do, I like art. I like archetypes, right? So I'm trying different archetypes now because I believe, because it came from when Emily was on this podcast and brought a little female energy to it, needed female energy. And she self-described herself as an artist. And it really stuck with me because at first I was like, I was kind of like, I don't like to hear that. But then I was like, that's actually true. And I think in media, it's always been the tension, as you like to remind me a lot, has always been between the artists and the suits at the end of the day. And you need both. You need the energy of both because without the suits, nobody eats. Okay. But you need the artist's energy to create like a product that is real. And now I think you have the engineers, and engineering has been freed from the technical gatekeeping that had before. And now someone like Troy can be an engineer and on top of being an artist and on top of being a suit. So you are like, the 3-tool player. The people that lose in this are the coordinators. And there's a coordination tax within a lot of these organizations.
Did you just call me a triple threat, Brian?
Yeah, you're a triple threat. You're a terrible coordinator. Because Troy admonished me. I don't want to bring people behind the curtain. Troy admonished me earlier this week because he was like, are you going to Jesse's thing? And I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. I'm in Miami. I don't remember when it is. He's like, it's literally right now. And then I get a text like a half hour later. And he was like, I showed up and it's next week.
No, it's tomorrow. It's
tomorrow.
Today,
okay. Well, so you are not on the coordinator, but you are a triple threat.
By the way, yes, I agree, Troy, you're a triple threat. That's a great way of looking at it, Brian. I do think Troy is a triple threat. I also think you have ADHD. So if you want a diagnosis, it probably would explain your love for nicotine. But I think it's great to have that nowadays. But here's the challenge is I don't know about like the suits never kind of rang true to me. There were always suits, but then there were, like you said, there were different like categories, maybe just kind of the operators versus, the different kind of categories of that. But the ones that are fading now are the ones that can provide scale, that can provide the moat that is scale. We're not there yet, but like the world where You don't have to bend over backwards to know a guy that knows a guy that will produce your movie because they have access to the money and the resources. That will change a lot, and that will increase the value of an artist, right? And because the knowledge gap, the knowledge required to make stuff, the money required to make stuff, the equipment required to make stuff, it's shrinking, at least in a category, in the software category we're talking about, right?
I think in everything, Alex, I'll share it. Maybe I'll put it in the newsletter. There's a nice little snippet of Beck talking about this on Instagram. And he's like, you just got to go make things. And I know that's hackneyed.
This sounds like something Alex would say, and you would call naive.
You just got to make things.
But it's fucking true,
that's
guys.
Where we are.
I mean,
and it's true. You got to just make things. And guess what? And the consequence of making something shitty,
by the way,
is zero. Because you just move on.
Here's why I say this, right? I am a person that was unable to finish school. I didn't graduate high school. I would have had a ton of issues being in any, in most jobs. But yet I found that my calling was I was really great at figuring out tools and having, taste and being able to put stuff together and make shit. And then I would put stuff out, and a lot of them failed. And then some of them didn't fail. And then some of them got attention. And then here I am now. I own a farm. Great. But it's true that if you're making stuff and you're putting stuff out into the world, that's how you're going to change things. And in a world where you're given access to so many tools to that allow you to really do anything, that's going to be a huge part of what you need to do.
Are you living in farm? I
am living in farm. But what I wanted to say, it's not like I want to be careful, because it's not like everybody should quit their job and start vibe coding in their basement like Troy. I think just the act of building things will make you a better operator.
I mean, I'm on the garden floor.
But the act of building things, of making things, will make you a better operator, will make you a better CEO, will make you better at hiring the people you need to hire in this day and age. If you do not do that, if you kind of separate that from your role, then that's.
And I do think we are in a golden age of artists striking out on their own. Now, not all of them are going to make it and whatnot, but I think that is liberating in that, to what you were saying, Alex. A lot of times artists felt like they were under the thumb of the suits. And in media, the suits kind of were in charge when this business went sideways. So I think it's difficult for a suits run media organization, because I think that the environment is biased against that. I think you can reverse engineer products, but I think the difficulty with reverse engineered media products is, and maybe this is just me, they feel fake. They feel overly engineered. That monitoring the situation that you mentioned is a kind of TBPN clone that Andreessen Horowitz came out with. They're backing it, just like Founders Fund really was the front for TBPN. And it is a live stream show that is going to expand the TAM. You can see basically the strategy behind it. And it was okay, TBPN caught on as a live stream for the tech elite, and monitoring the situation will go broader. It's not the Sports Center for tech. It's going to be more like CNN, and we're going to monitoring the Straits of Hormuz, et cetera. The problem is, at least in the early, and it's hard to judge these things early on, is it just feels overly engineered. And I think that is a liability these days.
That guy's got a serious mustache.
Yeah, I mean, the mustache.
Yeah, for the audio listeners, we're watching the stream now.
Are we bringing this back? Are we bringing the
the mustache is.
I like this, Alex.
I like the mustache. There's also somebody who hasn't buttoned up his shirt and who seems to be talking while on a treadmill, and has now picked up 2 energy drinks. I saw a Coke, and I saw maybe what was a hard.
Oh yeah, he's bouncing around his square too. He's ready.
It drives me crazy watching people like that, and they're talking on this show like they're on a Zoom call. And I was telling my wife this yesterday. It's just the tech industry has become really comfortable in putting themselves out there and completely ignoring the fact that a lot of the world dislikes them heavily, and it's not helping them. It's really not. It's really not. I watched that, and I kind of start feeling some self-hatred.
Well, I turned it on for the first time to be greeted by my guide Balaji Srinivasan doing his shtick that like literally he has 6 hours of material. And I once listened to 6-hour podcasts with this guy on a flight. Wow. And I got all the material. So he was back doing his material. And I said, if you're looking to expand the TAM, I wouldn't start with Balaji Srinivasan. And then they brought in that Sequoia nutcase who like pops up and says offensive things every couple months. But then, you know, he backed like SpaceX so he can say offensive things.
Oh, yeah.
This is not going to help. But good for them for trying. Alex, I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to get your take on Claude Design. Claude Design came out this week and, you know, immediately my X feed told me that designers are cooked. On top of that, ChatGPT came out with GPT-Image 2. It's able to, you know, look, these AI images are getting better. I will say that. I think the deep fake scare that happened a couple years ago, it was just a little early. The White House, never known to be discerning in their escapades in the information space, apparently fell for AI generated images when it comes to some protesters that Iran supposedly is going to execute. Are designers cooked, Alex? Again?
One of my best performing threads was designers are cooked. I'm now seeing engineers ship beautiful apps. Engineers are cooked. I'm now seeing designers ship beautiful apps.
Writers have always been cooked, thank God.
I think, I mean, I was telling Troy, like when I came into this business through a very kind of like unnatural path where, you know, the company we were doing, none of us were trained and we all did a lot of jobs. And I came to the US and then all of a sudden I started saying, well, this person is a product manager and they make they write the user stories. And this one is a UI designer and they design UI. And this guy is a brand designer. They do all the graphic design stuff. And then this is a UX designer. And then there's an information architect that does the wireframes. And it always drove me crazy because I was like, well, don't you just do a little bit of everything? Like, can't you just put all this stuff together? And I think people that had these kind of very kind of narrow paths, I think need to learn a lot of skills. I think a lot of people that I've met that were some of the best designers and the best engineers had a core set of skills, right? And they understood how to use the tools very well. They specialized in one tool, and that might have been Figma design, or there might have been coding in Swift or C# or whatever, but they understood the entire stack and how things were built. So these tools are a boon for them. They're like, oh, hey, I don't have to spend all that time doing it. And because I understand how these things kind of work together, it's actually an accelerant for me. So people who are tool users are just being gifted with these new tools that are very impressive.
Well, someone's cooked, Alex.
Lots of people
I got to jump in.
Lots of people are cooked.
Information architects are cooked.
People, okay,
do they still
I'll just
exist?
Tell my own little version of the story. In around year 2000, which now seems like a long time ago, there was a explosion of activity around the new internet, and everybody needed to extend their businesses to this new frontier. And so a new wave of service organization appeared, which were
the web shops,
the digital agencies, the Razorfish, the Organics, the Sapiens,
IXL.
The Science, the IXL. And, there was one in Atlanta and a couple in New York.
I dreamt
and
of working for these companies.
Science, Viant. Yes. They were like they all ended up within Razorfish.
Okay. So you got all these shops and I was a young man and I was running one. Okay. And it was at Organic and it was a very exciting time. We were about to go public. The business was exploding, literally exploding. There were warehouses full of organic people in San Francisco. It was founded and run by my good friend and still good friend to this day, Jonathan Nelson. And we had a business that grew in Toronto from basically me to 150 people in like a year. And the work that we did and the thing that paid our bills for years was we would go to Zappos or AT&T or Bank of Montreal or Bell Canada, and we would help them.
Chiefly your big clients, Bank of America. You guys were overly dependent on that, if I remember.
Bank of America. Okay. So you would help them craft their flows, create their interfaces, create design systems, code the front end, sometimes wire those front ends to the back end. If you were lucky, you get a big project and you do application development.
Personas too. You guys love personas. This
We
bullshit,
love personas
like-
because we were always trying to innovate around how to make the front end. You had a proprietary process to make it work better for consumers. That
You were
would
trying to
ultimately
innovate on how
affect
to
conversions.
add more hours to the building
The
cycle.
persona stuff was a great hustle, I got to say. Was that a racket or a hustle? It was a little bit of both.
It was a hustle, and it was rooted not in personas but in empathy, Brian.
This guy is
This was our empathy design practice.
This
Just
guy's
let
a
me finish
morning
the story,
navigator.
Brian,
line
please.
to your media operating system from that. Go on.
Okay.
Yeah. This,
Right. So I'm wondering who's the one that gives the most abuse or receives the most on this beautiful podcast. Okay.
Welcome to my dungeon.
So on the teams would be a project manager, sort of a solution architect, an information architect, very important, very hard to get good ones, a couple of designers, and a front end developer. Okay. And those would all add up, and over 3 months, you would bill out $300,000, $400,000. And that was the game. That was the business. And yesterday I went to Claude Design and I uploaded an interface and I said, this is crappy, make it good. And it asked me a bunch of questions and it restructured the page and it applied a design system based on cues that I had given it. And it downloaded HTML, or it provided all the HTML and all the design as code. And I was able to take that code and put it into my coding session over at Claude Code next door. And suddenly all of those well-articulated design files were applied to everything I was doing. And essentially what I did in 10 minutes is what we used to do in that 3-month period. Okay. And now you're seeing with the new OpenAI, what's it called? The Image 2 or whatever.
GPT-Image 2.
Image 2. Right. You're seeing design systems built with a level of creativity and fidelity and turned into code that is staggering, that would have taken people months. Now, all that means is all the people I just described are out of jobs. No more. So Claude's decision, or Anthropic's decision, to focus on coding tools, the tools that make the things in our world, good choice. Now, turns out that design on some level is patterns and code. And they're applying that same system to the role of a designer, just like eventually it will get applied to other knowledge work, be it, low-level legal work or financial analysis. And it means that you have to occupy a different layer in the kind of value stack as a human being. Like, it's just that part of what we used to do is over.
But to be fair, Troy, you compared it, and look, there's going to be a lot of displacement. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There are a lot of folks who were doing jobs that are immensely replaceable, right? But as somebody who was deep in the shit, right? As somebody that was like kind of like a few layers down from where you were sitting at Organic, this disruption, especially in tech, has been happening throughout. And there were things I was, the example I gave is always like, I was really good at compressing images because, you needed to push this stuff through modem. And that was a whole skill. And I became really good at it. And it took me months of like understanding how certain things work to feel like, I was actually proficient at it. That's a skill that disappeared. Then, HTML was, having to build things in HTML was a skill that disappeared. A lot of this stuff was like, has been constantly optimized, automated, out of your workflow, and hopefully, I think people have been seeing that trajectory. Now we're seeing a massive,
true, Alex. Except that optimizing images was like a couple guys. Like we're talking about thousands of people.
These web shops employed a lot of people, and roles do change.
That was because the business model was how many people can you put on a fucking bill?
Well, yeah, that's a painful shift, a shift to outputs, and people don't want to hire designers. They want design. Like if they don't, like the idea, and the same for journalists, like the idea that journalists are going to have to feed the machine. Sorry, you're going to have to. Some of you will work for the New Yorker and you'll be able to do great, narrative journalism and craft and all of that. But the reality is, the people who are creating the derivative Kardashian content to get traffic. Like, you're going to be feeding a machine. That's just the reality. And
it was
I would
so
love
obvious.
this, if you don't mind, Alex. Let me
I was at
broaden this.
Airbnb. No. Let me just finish with this. I was at Airbnb. I was running at some point. I was running marketing and design, all these teams, and I would have agencies come to me, like 9 people in the fucking room, right, with titles I didn't understand, and we would all talk for like an hour and a half, and I would know that at the end of the day, like 2 of my dudes would end up doing all the work, and that stuff like was noticeable 10 years ago. That like a lot of people had jobs that meant nothing.
Well, I'll put this into the take machine, if you don't mind, the big hot take machine.
All right.
So
sorry, I don't mean to like dismiss.
no, I know you were hostile
jobs.
to agencies. That's why people used to call me and always say, "Why is Alex so hostile to fucking agencies?"
Because fucking do the work. Like, stop charging us for like nothing.
Okay, man. Okay, I get it. I got that when you yelled at me 10 years ago.
To launch an agency, actually. To hate agencies to then launch an agency is perfect.
That's the way we should do it. Shall we launch a PV agency?
Yeah.
Well,
guys,
everything we need.
So there's point one is the farm to table point. And you're going to see it's like vinyl, farm to table, handmade shit. It's like there's the economy, which is incredibly humans centered, and people, participated in and buy it for that reason. And then there's the sort of packaged goods economy, which is like the AI side. And we go to restaurants and we also buy Doritos, right? So there's going to be, this bigger and bigger divide, between that which is kind of machine assisted or machine made and that which is human crafted.
On that, I brought up that like restaurant I went to in Rome that was, a bit of a shtick, but like one of the things that I noticed that struck me was like at the end of like one of those like tasting menu, omakase type things that are now like everywhere, is that the chef came out of the kitchen and he like spooned the gravy over your pork. The 2 pieces of pork. And at the end of the day, you have to get out of the kitchen and spoon the gravy. So that's my one piece of career advice that I gave to a bunch of NYU students.
This whole podcast is just setups for Brian to come in and just you just did it.
Gravy.
You just poured
spoon the gravy. You might not want to spoon the gravy. I'm sure this guy, he trained at like these amazing restaurants all over the world, and he finally got a shot to like, build his own restaurant in a fancy part of Rome, and he's out of the kitchen spooning the gravy.
Yeah. Wow.
Sad. Before you have your hard stop, Alex, I want to get your take on the exit of Tim Cook and what I believe has been Apple's boring decade. Yes, he was very successful. Classic managerial CEO. He's a suit. He's not an artist. He's being replaced by a hardware guy who's getting dragged for not having a LinkedIn profile. And that is the sign of a man that is truly free. What is your take?
Yes, that is a sign of a man also that spent his entire career at Apple and doesn't need a
Look, there's a lot of paths to freedom.
Yeah, Tim Cook, not a product guy, but easy to underestimate like the work he did, right? Like the value of Apple was $350 billion when he joined. He was he brought it to the first company at $1 trillion. And I know Troy loves to rate CEOs entirely by, how much money they make. So, and it's now worth $4 trillion. So he did a good job. I think that what happened under Tim Cook was that Apple just became this machine that was just able to produce a brand new iPhone and different variants of iPhones in all sorts of colors every year, and that is amazing. And I don't know,
but boring
in a certain way. I think we forget a couple of things. First of all, when he joined, I think Steve Jobs told the world and told him, therefore, that Johnny Ive was the most powerful person at Apple, and there was a lot of kind of Johnny Ive driven projects because these things take a few years to come out of the gate. And so the launch of the Apple Watch, the things like that were very kind of design forward, and then it kind of needed to be rectified to really become successful. But he did oversee the launch of like services, right, which is very successful for them. And I would say good products. Apple Pay is a good product.
But boring. Come on, fintech, boring.
AirPods, right? But yes, entirely boring. I think Apple became boring both in what they tried, right? Because if you remember kind of the iPod era, there was a new fucking format. You could stick it in your pocket. It was long and thin. It had a screen on it. It had a little thing, and it was tiny. It was big. They haven't tried anything really fun. And secondly, I think the way they've communicated has just turned them into this really unapproachable thing. And one thing, Troy asked me what is the one thing I would want Turnus to do, is just bring back the in-person live fucking demos. Just somebody on stage, excited to talk about their product. Jensen from Nvidia does it. It works well. It changes the attitude. It changes the relationship with the audience. And try some fucking weird shit. I want to see a screen that sits on my kitchen countertop and swivels around or something. I don't know.
Do you know what his number one? I think my number one memory of Tim Cook will be when he told Elon Musk to fuck you. When Elon Musk said he wanted to combine Tesla and Apple and be CEO. However, it is an interesting thought exercise of what would Apple have done if Elon Musk did become Apple's CEO? I think it would be a totally different company. I don't know if it'd be better or worse, but that's like an interesting one. For instance, like I think the reasons.
I think it would be worse, to be honest, but
yeah,
it would be more entertaining though.
Yeah.
I'm a narrative person.
Yeah, I know.
Truck, dude.
Yeah. I think he would have worked very hard to take credit for inventing the Mac. Which is
he would have built the car. You know what? Tim Cook should have built the car. I know all the reasons why they didn't build the car. They should have built the car. That would have been exciting.
It's interesting. I think the car is something that they should have never gone into. I feel that there's many products that we all would love to see from Apple, just including a new mouse potentially, but like some in-home stuff.
A new mouse? What?
I mean, that mouse, they haven't changed it in forever. I think that's where, like, when a supply chain person says that, the supply chain is, like those mice are probably selling at like massive profit margins, but they're awful.
This is financialization. This is gross. A new mouse. I want a car, not a mouse.
I don't think that it wants to build a car. I really don't. But
they should build a rocket.
They should have made a TV.
Before you go, I don't know if you saw Dwarkish Patel had a one-on-one with Jensen Huang, and Jensen Huang has been like everywhere. He's really been dining out a lot on this leather jacket. Like, kudos to the stylist that came up with this shtick, which it is a shtick. Anyway, Dwarkish Patel is like one of these fast-talking tech podcasters. He's like a bit of like a wonderkind. He's like 25 years old, and he has a lot of like young person tics, which can be off-putting for an old person like me.
Isn't he like a baby Tyler Cohen?
What are young person?
He's like a polymath, right?
Oh, trying to make clear like how smart you are,
or
because like he does a really good job in that he's very technical, but in some ways he wants to make sure you know how technical he is. So he lapses into using a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms and whatnot.
I agree with you.
Prove that he's like one of them, and that part is a little off-putting.
I can tell you that I cannot listen to any of these people. I live here and I'm used to this talk and I'm allergic to it. So, yes.
Well, I will say this. He got into a very technical discussion with Jensen Huang of why Nvidia, obviously they're self-interested, but wants to sell their most advanced chips or even just advanced chips to China. Yeah. And I thought that he really got a rise out of a very media prepared CEO who I've seen like constantly. And it's sort of led me to think that being very technical is almost better with this in this area than it is the typical sort of lawyer approach of like 60 minutes, put them in the hot seat and really press them. Whereas this was a different approach, which he really just kept at it with the technical details of his arguments. So
it's really interesting because what happens usually is that the kind of the CEO or the technical guy in that case is holding a bunch of cards, right? Of kind of like waving around science stuff that the other person can't respond to, waving around like future possibilities that are completely unproven. So having somebody technical does put them a little bit on the back foot. But in this case, if anybody's, I think, interested in it, it was like whether or not we should sell these chips to China, right? There are basically two, from the way I understand it, there are two camps. If you think that AI is this existential threat, right, and you have the first one to reach AGI has won the race to become the world leader in everything, then you absolutely want to keep all those chips on your cap, not give them to anyone else, and make sure that you reach AGI first. However, Jensen's camp seems to be more, and I mean, it benefits them saying this. Well, we're not heading towards, a God machine, and this is not the end of the world. We're just selling tools, and therefore, it is actually competitively beneficial to us to make China dependent on American-built tools, right? Why drive them to invest, for their economy to be optimized around investing and building their own versions of the chips? And that is usually the tension, I feel, is that the people who are saying sell to China are like, it's fine. Everybody is moving forward. We're always going to be ahead. If China is dependent on us, it's better. The other one's saying, no, in the next 3 years, we're going to have a God that can kill us all, and we better be in control of it. And that's really the argument underlying all this. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And nobody fucking knows anything. So great,
It's good for podcast content. I don't know if you have a hard stop, but AB is here.
I do have a hard stop.
You're welcome to stay around. You can ghost when you want. AB,
Hey, AB.
Quick one. You were at the Semaphore World Economy, formerly known as Semaphore World Economy Summit. You dropped a summit. It's a platform. Now, what did you learn there? I'm interested in the event format specifically.
I mean, the nice thing is I got to lodge my complaint of fake sins with the CEO of Philip Morris. So he took that back. Good. It was the first time going there, and I think they did a really good job of layering the attendees. So there's no cost to go, right? So you get invited, and then there's a bunch of brand sponsors. So there's like 4 layers to the event. So there's like a general admission where there's free food and stages where people present. And then like the next layer, which is sort of super invite only, or if you're a sponsor, it's more like much smaller sessions. So they have like 30 people in a room. You can ask questions, and then they'll obviously do the setting up the meetings and things like that. But it was just surprising. One day I walked and I got to see sort of the back of like all these other meetings they had set up, and you can see how they're able to generate significant revenue with big corporate partners because they basically have a concierge program and say like, we can do these. It's like Davos, like we can help you with these bilateral meetings, and it's pretty compact. It's in one hotel, but it has sort of like these different flavors of general admission where people can watch people on stage, but then there's much more business happening in the deeper layers.
Yeah, I like that because small rooms are sort of in vogue right now, but you want the leverage of a larger scale event because who wants to do a bunch of tiny events? I know this person. Let's start with Vox real quick. And I'm interested, like, I assume Versen is going to take the podcasting operations. That makes a lot of sense. What happens to the web publishing assets?
I think they'll sell New York Mag separately, and then the rest, I don't know what happens.
I mean, the rest, as you put it.
Dodo, they have a bunch of brands, SB Nation. Yeah, we'll probably, I don't know, either go to Penske or one of your glue factories. But it's tough to see anyone seeing real value there. I think there's value in New York Magazine. And for Versen, the podcast network is really strong. I just don't think they're big enough. And Dotdash already has its
What about Eater and Verge
sites? There's not really anyone else out there that really wants that type of stuff.
I was talking earlier this week to like a People Inc. exec, and it is kind of remarkable if you think about it, the history of that company, going from About.com to then Neil changed it to Dotdash Meredith with these like kind of fake brands, but brands that made sense in a search index, very well, like and whatnot. And then they bought the Meredith properties and they totally overpaid. They top ticked it perfectly in December of 2021. And it looked like a terrible purchase, like in the next like couple years, but literally they're demand media 2.0 in many ways, I think, without those assets because, the rug got pulled out from under them with the search game. So you never know until in retrospect.
I think if you look at the deal announcement when they first did that, I think they thought they could get more synergies and maintain more of the like the EBITDA was supposed to go up much more significantly than what's happened. But
yeah, but like, the environment has been brutal.
Yeah.
So.
I think Versen's an interesting one. It's this spinoff of certain media assets from Comcast. And they're in this interesting spot where
MS Now is their main asset. Yeah.
No, they own CNBC.
Yeah.
They own the Golf Channel. They own, what's the other one? They own a couple, like they're recognizable cable channels. The long-term revenue generation is like they're losing a lot of EBITDA every year. It trades for less than 4 times EBITDA, but it got spun out with over 3 million, 2.5 million of EBITDA. But their whole goal, like what they have to basically do is try to run around and go find stuff to buy to offset these significant declines with their linear networks. So they own USA Network, Oxygen, and they've started to do this. So so they also own Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes. So they've started to invest more in software platforms. I think the problem with buying the Vox stuff is it's not that much more EBITDA, right? So like they're going to have to probably take bigger swings and find things that are trading at relatively low valuations. Otherwise, it's going to be really dilutive to the share price. But this is one.
Well, isn't it also cheap programming?
Yeah. But the problem is like the cash cow of getting paid for distribution is going away. Like Comcast and Verizon, Fios is not paying a cable channel for the distribution anymore. And so they just have to really lean into finding other things to buy.
What about Bulwark? That seems like it makes sense. I mean, I think they're going to like end up taking out a couple of these podcast companies, whether it's Crooked Media and Bulwark or similar, because they're going to want a story to tell that they're not just a bunch of declining cable assets, and it makes sense.
But just think about how much, when you lose like 200 million of EBITDA a year, that you have to buy a lot of these podcast networks to replace that much, right?
We can become more progressive.
The other place they can lead into is finance with CNBC. So I know we talked a couple episodes ago about some of these different finance newsletters. That's like a place for them to scale more quickly.
Good point. Troy, any thoughts?
I think that captures it.
Okay. I got a couple of quick media notes. This is like media OT, right? You know, when we're talking about different points of leverage, I think like being very, how do I put this? I don't want to say like a suit, but I think like being very overly prepared as a media executive can be a liability. I got sent it by a couple of people. There was a podcast that Nilay Patel did on Decoder with Sarah Personette, the CEO of Puck. Sarah, I don't know Sarah well. I've had her on my podcast. She's very cautious and she's, very prepared and whatnot. And I think that was always like a major asset in this kind of environment. And I think it was just sort of miscast with, Nilay Patel, like when he does these things, he's a student of Kara Swisher, and so it gets like hostile pretty quickly. I treat people with kid gloves. Let's be real. It led to I got a lot of comments, on this thing. I don't know if you saw it, Troy, did you?
I could only tolerate 20 minutes of it, to be honest.
Okay.
I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think that the polish made it feel fake. That doesn't work very well in podcasts. And then there was like, I don't know but Nilay was trying to pick a fight. And so, there's a sort of sanctimoniousness to his approach that I think that it just didn't work well with, he didn't want her to kind of deliver her points. He wanted to challenge her, and that's why
he was trying to knock her off her game, and it made for good entertainment. Probably not what Puck's PR team wanted, but kind of interesting. I noticed Fortune is hiring a showrunner. I think this is a sign of, institutional media always on the back foot with this pivot to streaming, if you will, or at least a near-term opportunity. And what's funny is a lot of these institutional media companies were already there. I mean, HuffPost was doing a live streaming show like 10 years ago. Yahoo Finance had one. They've been in this game. They just did not like nail it like others did. FT is launching a new YouTube finance history series. Very, very FT. Robin Wigglesworth, which is a great British name.
I'll watch that.
Yeah, with Gillian Tett, who I love. She's an anthropologist.
The thing about these media brands like Forbes and Fortune is they're great brands. And the question is, where do you go after you've either decided to or been unable to compete in the real kind of media flywheel game? In other words, you're saturating a niche or doing enough original reporting, or you're just substantial enough to kind of hold up to a subscription proposition. And if that's not where you are, which is where someone say like the Economist is, or where the Atlantic is, or where the FT is. If you're not playing that game, where do you go next? And you exhaust the list racket. And, you're going to still do that. You're going to do billionaires and the best companies in America and all that. And you're going to put events around all that. But then where do you go? And I think that's the big question for someone like Fortune.
Well, I think you end up going into harvesting mode.
Or that.
I mean, and that's okay. Like the idea that every single brand will exist forever and will always be in growth mode and is unrealistic. Otherwise, like, that's just not life. Forbes got knocked around a little bit. They put a prediction market widget on a story about a mass shooting of 8 children. This kind of reminded me of early AdSense, like where an Overture would always like send me notes. They were a competitor to Google, about how they would find like a Samsonite ad on a New York Post story about a severed head being found in luggage. There's going to be some of these things. I give them credit for really leaning into hey, we'll try it. We will absolutely try it. They came out with a wine vertical that they're going to be like selling their own wine also recently. So I think these things are inevitable. I think the prediction market stuff, look, there's a lot of money in that. This is separate from that, but I do think that media is going to get more involved with prediction markets, and you got to keep people around web pages, and so you're going to end up doing things that, sometimes will go.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes putting a quote unquote engagement item or unit inside of a, web page to try to create engagement is a bit of a fool's errand. I don't think that the sort of 404 gotcha angle, which is like, oh my God, look at this story that was created about something horrible, and they put it wasn't a Polymarket widget, it was some other widget. It was their own. And it turns out that you can get coins and you can bet your own coins, and they tried to build a little economy around it. I don't think it's ever going to work, and I don't think it's ever going to make money. But yeah, I would say applaud them for trying to find ways to make the web page even kind of moderately more interesting than a page of content. I only look at it like the utilities in the content, not in your kind of cockamamie betting widget, make better content.
So Ari Emanuel's has an events company called Mari, and they acquired a collectibles conference this week. And the collectible space, like collecting baseball cards and Pokemon, you guys do it?
No, I'm not a collectibles person.
It's a massive industry. There's a couple companies in the space. Fanatics is a producer. There's these 2 card grading companies. They have massive backlogs in terms of grading. One of them will grade 5 million Pokemon cards this year. And so it's flipped from like stamp collecting, where some people do it and they show up to these live in-person events, to being a massive economy. It's pretty wild.
Why does everything have to become an asset class? I'm going to be naive here, why does everything have to become an asset class? I collected Topps baseball cards for the love of the game as like an 8-year-old. It wasn't to accrue an asset.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is people, if they own stocks, they're up significantly, and they're trying to put.
You're asking Blake that question?
It's more of a statement. It's more of just like a statement of what are we doing here? Like why do we make children's?
I mean, let's
class
bigger market than you think.
It's becoming like the market is like, depending on what category you go after, it's $10 to $20 billion a year, from the new stuff to everything people buy in terms of like artifacts after games, like game worn jerseys, to the trading. It's a massive thing on eBay. It's just surprising, because if you're not a collector, I'm not a collector, but as you get more into it, you realize that there's a lot of economic activity going around. There's a lot of companies being built, and it goes from this in-person stuff to Brian, you'll love, there's like a gambling aspect to this called gotcha machines. And you can basically do digital pack openings online. So you put in $50 and then the machine opens up the pack for you, and you can decide to keep it or sell it back, and you can keep going. And the margins on those businesses replicate slot machines. So people are just opening these digital packs online and then sort of betting on that they're going to find a card that's worth more than what they bet.
Should we go to a good product?
Okay, let's go there.
Brian, we've done this a lot now. We've done it for, I don't know, almost a couple hundred episodes. So I did go back into our little knowledge receptacle, and I want to pick out some of the ones from the past quickly. Just like oldies, but goldies. You know?
What you're recycling old? This is
I'm not recycling at all. I'm just going to put some context.
This is like when Facts of Life, they were like on the
No,
hook
but we've
for-
talked about Waymo and Joe's Shanghai for soup dumplings, Scotch bonnet peppers, great media like Secret Mall Apartment or Night of Seven Kingdoms, Tyler Cohen's podcast, the book Wizard of the Kremlin. You know, we've talked about, I don't know, Eames loungers, Japanese toilets, one of my favorites, backgammon. We've talked about the Buffalo Bills, the greatest sports franchise ever. You brought up nice little poetic things like New York City steam vents. You know, we reminded people of our love of dogs, Harriet the dog, my dog. Talked about Zins endlessly, bad design like Pontiac Aztec and the AMC Gremlin. Remember those? Those are good ones. So it's been a long journey. And today I would only say I have a question about a good product that I have not yet discovered, and a good product that I think is a nice travel companion, which I'll start with that because it's Monopoly Deal. Do you ever play Monopoly Deal?
No.
It's a Monopoly card
app?
game. No. It's a card game. It's old school, man. They play it a lot in my house. They play it when they're traveling. My daughter plays it. Jillian plays it. And it's kind of Monopoly compressed into a kind of 15-minute high conflict card game where, you know, it's got all the same kind of brand language as Monopoly, but you're trading properties, and there's lots of little upsetting cards that enable you to steal properties from your opponent and stuff like that. It's a great game. And it came out in 2008, and they've sold millions of them. It's a hit. If you have, you know, if you know, you know. So it's that. I've got a problem, and I'm looking for input. And you guys might have input for me. Brian, you might have input for me. But I need a new mattress, and I need new pillows.
Oh, boy.
And I'm looking for a good product. But, you know, like I don't want the kind of, you know, there's the Hastings, which are like 30 to 100 grand. There's like the V-Spring. These are the premium mattresses, right? The British Heritage brand. Those are like 20 to 50 grand. There's Savoir beds, which came out of the Savoy Hotel in London. Those are crazy expensive. Anyway, there's another one called Stearns and Foster in Edinburgh. But I'm looking for a mattress that isn't too expensive. I'm happy to pay up a little bit, but just a quality premium product. And bonus if I also get a great pillow recommendation. I used to actually go up to the Good Housekeeping Institute at the Hearst building and get pillows from them.
You need like the Eat Sleep mattress cover too.
It's too trendy.
Everyone that has them loves them. They
A friend of mine has that one. Is that the one that cools down that has the whole pump system with it?
Yeah, they're based in Miami. That gives me a pause.
What kind of mattress do you have, Brian?
I have a fairly standard you know, from one of those online, one of the ones that like inflate like in front of you. Like, so I have two thoughts on that. I wouldn't go that direction. Have you considered a waterbed? I mean,
I used to have one when I was a kid.
These have fallen out of favor. Their maintenance, you know, they spring leaks. They got a really bad reputation after.
If they get cold, they're terrible. If your heater breaks or the power goes out.
Okay, so it's in the consideration set. So the other one that I came in contact with at this hotel in Italy was like a modern version of the old Craftmatic adjustable. I don't know if you remember those from the 80s, but that was big in mattress innovation.
Is that when you can pull the back up so you can like eat soup?
You don't pull it, you got a remote control. It's like you're in a hospital bed. And there's each side has its own control. So like you can go at like, I don't know, 65 degrees just on your own.
If you ever see that in my house, feel free to shoot me.
It also raises your feet. So you can be like propped up and also have your feet like
but if you come in and it's individually set in and we're laying in bed and I'm propped up and her legs are up or whatever, like this is a terrible product. This makes me no.
Not in the consideration set. That's all I have for you. Sorry.
What about you? Have you got any suggestions? Everybody loves those Haston things, but they're egregious. They're so
I think the interesting thing is expensive beds actually are really comfortable. Like I've slept in I don't have a $10,000 mattress, but I've slept in one and it's really nice. I just have a Tempur-Pedic. But I think like I was at this dinner last night and everyone was talking about Eat Sleep. So I might get one of these mattress covers.
It seems like a very high margin product. And so I'm very skeptical.
I mean, it's a disaster of a company, but everybody, it's like $3,000. And then they have a subscription service.
When your mattress has an app and a subscription service, I don't know. I just want to buy a mattress.
That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, let's leave it there, guys.
Nice one, guys.